The story begins in Shinjuku City, where a girl named Izumo has just finished reading her favorite book. She wishes her life could have been more romantic-like in her story, but she prepares to end her own life. However, a man named Andy suddenly warns her that she's standing in a dangerous spot. She tells him to stay away, claiming he'll get an incurable disease if he touches her, but he approaches her anyway, allowing himself to get stabbed. This causes her to panic as he grabs onto her, telling her that he has never heard of a deadly disease transmitted by touch. Izumo reveals that she has the ability to give bad luck to anyone she touches, as Andy suddenly falls, and he gets run over by a train. She blames herself for the incident, thinking she just got him killed, but his head suddenly flies to her, and his body quickly regenerates as she watches on in disbelief. Andy thinks that he's lucky to meet her, but she gives him a painful punch, and she starts running away, but he grabs onto her, revealing that he is undead. He is about to inquire about her ability, but he notices that the police are on their way, so he flies away, using his blood to fly around the city, and he takes her to the top of a building. Izumo tries to escape, but Andy stops her, saying she can't leave until she answers his questions. She warns him that he will trigger her ability, but he knows that this won't happen because he's only touching her clothes. She implores him to let her go, but she notices that it's a long way down. He wants her to answer his questions, but she refuses, saying she'd rather die, so he threatens to throw her off the building, scaring her into submission. Izumo reveals that it started 10 years ago when her parents were about to leave for a business trip. They gave her a hug before they entered the plane, but before they could take off, the plane suddenly exploded, killing everyone inside. After the incident, she discovered her ability, blaming herself for the death of her parents, and she is covering her body with clothing to keep others safe. But Andy suddenly hugs her, saying he wants to test her ability. A crate falls from a plane, and it crushes his body as Izumo tries to run away, but she loses her footing, causing her to fall off the building. This causes her to panic, revealing that she isn't ready to die, so she starts crying, but Andy catches up to her and saves her from certain death. He tells her that he won't let her die, because she might be able to give him a real death, thinking she is hiding something about her ability, which could be the key to finally ending his life. They fly back to his hideout, where Andy tells Izumo to remove her clothes, wanting to learn more about her ability, but she starts running away, because she doesn't want him to see her naked. She gets caught on a nail, and loses her hat, revealing her ridiculously long hair. She reveals that no one has ever cut her hair, because she knows that the hairstylist would end up dead. But Andy holds onto her, and he starts cutting her hair, revealing that he used to work as a stylist. He knows that her ability won't be triggered until he lets go of her, but he tells her not to worry, reminding her that he's undead. He shows her the end result, and she's actually happy to see this. Andy is excited to see what's going to happen, knowing he has held onto her for 15 minutes. His head is suddenly sliced off as a group of men appear, thanking Izumo for helping them capture Andy. They put his head in a capsule, and they put handcuffs on her, telling her that their job is to control negators like her, but she has no idea what they're talking about. Their leader reveals that they know about her ability, so they are using clothes to protect themselves. He reveals that they are going to exploit her ability, saying Andy was planning to do the same, but she rejects the idea, telling him that Andy is nothing like them. He warns her to watch her tongue, threatening to kill her if she doesn't cooperate, and she starts to blame herself for Andy's fate, but she thanks him for cutting her hair. At that moment, one of the men is struck by lightning, so they start to wonder if this is because of Izumo's ability, but they conclude that it isn't, because she never touched the man. However, Izumo tells them that they're wrong, and Andy suddenly breaks free. The men prepare to cut him down, as their leader tells them that Andy is a weak fighter, but Andy claims that he used to be good at fighting. He reveals that his brain can't handle storing over 100 years worth of his memories, so he put a cork on his brain to block it out. He unlocks his memories, allowing him to regain his fighting skills, which he uses to defeat the enemies. Andy concludes that the appearance of the enemies was purely by chance, and the lightning bolt is the result of Izumo's ability. He returns the cork, and the leader threatens to kill Izumo if Andy doesn't hand over his head. So he slices off his head and throws it to the leader. But Izumo breaks free, and she kisses Andy, revealing that they are about to experience the ultimate bad luck. The leader isn't bothered, but Andy is excited, telling her to run away, as he keeps the leader busy. Izumo gets out of the building as a meteor falls, causing a massive explosion that blows her away. Izumo thinks that Andy is dead, but he emerges from the rubble, and she is overjoyed to see that he survived. But after some time, Andy tells her to mate with him, thinking it will trigger an even greater bad luck. Izumo doesn't want to do it, telling him about the time she kissed her grandfather, who she didn't really like, and he just ended up with a sprained ankle. So she concludes that the more she likes the person, the greater the effect becomes. She explains that if Andy forces himself on her, she's going to hate him, and she won't be able to give him the death that he desires. So he changes his plan, telling her that he won't let her die until she falls in love with him. They visit an armory, where Andy fits Izumo with heavy armor, telling her that it should protect her from their enemies. He reveals that an organization is after them, and he's expecting a second group to show up. He explains that he and Izumo are called negators because they negate the rules of the world, saying the enemy organization also has negators. The enemy already knows about their abilities, so he thinks that they don't stand a chance, suggesting that they run away. They try to get away on a bike, but Andy reveals that he has no destination in mind. Izumo thinks they're going to get caught, but he assures her that he won't let her die until she falls in love with him, so that she can give him the biggest stroke of bad luck. She thinks that she'll never fall in love with him, saying she doesn't even like him. At that moment, a crack appears in the sky, and Andy recognizes it as a warp gate. The sky shatters as the enemy, Void, charges at them, blowing Izumo away. She sees that Andy has been crushed, so she runs to him, but she realizes that she's running backwards, and she bumps into a man named Shen, as she notes that she can't move her legs. Shen tells Void that he caught her, but Void tells him to kill her, revealing that their mission is to eliminate Izumo and capture Andy. However, Shen doesn't want to do it, and he starts asking her personal questions. Andy swiftly recovers, and he is about to attack Void, but he suddenly stops moving. Void punches him away, but Andy realizes he can move again. He thinks Void must have the ability to stop his movements, but Izumo speculates that it was Shen who stopped him. But he disagrees, saying Void paralyzed his body, while Shen is manipulating her will. Void hits him, and he immediately counters, as he realizes that he can move immediately after he gets hit. They proceed to exchange blows, as Izumo wonders if the organization will chase them forever. Shen reveals that they've become a high-priority target because of the meteor that fell on the building, so there will be plenty of negators going after them. Izumo learns that Shen and Void are also negators, so she wonders why they aren't being hunted. Shen explains that there is a group called the Union, and there are 10 negators within its ranks, who are exempted from pursuit, under the condition that they carry out missions. Izumo thinks about joining the Union, but Void tells her that all the seats are taken, and he is about to attack her, but Andy saves her, saying it will be a great idea to join the Union. He suggests eliminating 2 negators, so that they can take the spots, assuring her that he will keep her safe. She touches him, and she quickly runs away, telling him that he is about to have massive bad luck, but it's not because she loves him, saying she's only grateful for everything that he has done for her. A truck crashes into Andy, and it explodes, but Shen and Void are able to escape unscathed. Andy flies away, as he thinks about the abilities that the enemies have. He remembers how Void stopped him from moving whenever he was ready to attack, so Andy concludes that Void's ability is to make his attacks unavoidable. But Shen's ability is still a mystery, so Andy needs to be careful until he figures it out. However, he realizes that there are bombs in the area, and they explode, causing the building to collapse. Izumo wonders if this is because of her ability, or if it happened purely by chance. Void survives the explosion because of his suit, and he sees Andy's arms sticking out of the rubble, so he grabs onto it, thinking he has finally caught the target. But Andy suddenly appears, revealing that his body parts disappear 30 seconds after they have been cut off. He bites his finger and points it at Void, who tries to freeze him, but Andy launches his finger, which hits Void's head and defeats him in an instant. Andy explains that Void can only immobilize his muscles, but he can launch his body parts using his regenerative powers, so he didn't need to move a muscle to land the finishing blow. Shen realizes that Void has been defeated, and Andy tries to attack him, but he easily parries the attacks. Andy tries to guess what kind of ability he has, thinking it has something to do with parrying. Izumo gives him the sword, and he prepares to cut him down, but he suddenly stops moving, as Shen tells him that he hesitated for a moment. Shen wonders if Andy has a soft spot for Izumo, who tries to touch him, but she completely misses. He refuses to reveal his ability, but he tells them that they won't be able to run away or touch him because his ability affects their minds. He wonders who will be joining the Union to replace Void, so Andy tells him to give the spot to Izumo, telling her not to worry because he will be able to survive and make her fall in love with him before she dies. Shen is about to take her away, but she tells him to look away because she's about to make love to Andy. She thinks that he deserves a reward because he fought for her with everything he had, telling him that this is his chance to die. But Shen suddenly starts laughing, admitting that he has taken a liking to them, so he wants them to take out another Union member, offering to help them join when there are 2 spots. He reveals that a Union member will be going to a lake in Russia, advising them to look for a man with an emblem and a red necktie. He hopes that they will succeed, saying there will be people hunting them along the way, and he decides to leave them alone. Izumo is surprised that they have been spared, and Andy helps her get dressed, telling her that he doesn't want her when she's desperate. He tells her about his plan, revealing that he has a boat which they can use to reach Russia, where they will then take a plane to a place called Irkutsk so they can meet his allies, who will help them defeat the Negator and secure another vacant spot in the Union so that they can finally live in peace. 50 years earlier, we see Andy trapped in an isolation facility as a young girl watches him. Back in the present, we see the girl on a satellite as she tracks Andy's boat. We see Andy enjoying the ride, but Izumo hides, worried they are going to be hunted. Andy drags her out, telling her to enjoy it, but they suddenly come under attack. Izumo thinks they're in trouble, but Andy tells her they can always use her ability to get away. Izumo thinks her ability isn't that convenient, but Andy says it's all about how she uses it, showing off how he can use his ability for more than just staying alive. Izumo is impressed and wonders if they can join the Union now, but Andy tells her they need to go after the person with the emblem, thinking it must represent the 10 members. He notes that he's aware of 3 other people that would have an emblem. The first is the maker of his indestructible sword that he stole. The second is a scientist who experimented on him 50 years ago, and the third is a girl named Jean, who can create invisible barriers, and she was the one who captured him all those years ago. We learn that the girl has a thing for Andy, calling him the only man she has ever loved. She launches a blast from her satellite, and it instantly destroys their ship. Andy wonders what they were attacked by, and he sees Izumo unconscious. He finds she is trapped under the wreckage, but he cuts his arm off and uses his regeneration to push the wreckage away. As he swims up, he notices something that gives him an idea. They make it back to the surface, and Izumo regains consciousness. Andy tells her to put her hands up, as the enemy tells them to surrender. Izumo is surprised they are surrendering, but Andy says he's just buying time to figure out if they can control her ability. Izumo thinks it's impossible, but Andy has a theory. He notes that her previous strokes of bad luck always draw on something of proportional value. In the cases of the haircut and their kiss, they meant a lot to her, and when there was nothing nearby of proportional value, her ability pulled lightning and a meteor. He notes that there's something of proportional value underwater that they can use, and Izumo notices that her bra is out of place. Andy says he had to move it to give her CPR, and Izumo realizes he saw her naked. He also says that she wasn't waking up, so he even gave her mouth to mouth. Izumo can't believe this, and there is suddenly a huge explosion that shoots them up, allowing them to get onto the jet. Andy cuts through the pilot in an instant, and they end up stealing the plane. Andy tells Izumo they can control her ability by finding a source of misfortune, and then by applying a suitable amount of contact, they will be able to trigger it, telling her that her ability is now their trump card. As they continue to fly, the plane suddenly prepares to self-destruct. Andy quickly ejects, and the plane explodes. Izumo thinks they are going to fall, but Andy softens the landing with his body. They manage to arrive in Irkutsk, and Izumo is amazed to see such a beautiful lake. Andy tells her to check it out, while he goes to find his friends, saying the Union won't make a move on her while there are so many tourists around. Izumo thinks about how much has changed in just 4 days after meeting Andy. She gets approached by some other people, but she doesn't understand them, so she just runs away. She stops as she notices a girl painting, and it turns out to be Jean. Jean is excited to meet another Japanese person, and she even gets Izumo to paint with her. Jean asks Izumo if she likes things that change or things that stay the same. Izumo isn't sure, and Jean reveals she prefers things that stay the same, like art, which allows her to capture the world as a never-changing drawing. Izumo ends up finishing her painting, and Jean is surprised to see stars, because there should be nothing in space besides the sun and the moon. But Izumo thought the moon looked lonely, so she gave it some friends. She thinks about Jean's question from earlier, revealing that she used to feel like she could never change, but after meeting Andy and going through so much with him, she appreciates things that can change. But Jean calls her naive, putting on her tie as she suddenly starts floating up into the sky. Andy returns, and he instantly tries to attack Jean, but he is just pushed away. Izumo is shocked realizing who she really is, and Jean prepares to play with them, knowing that they are after her. Jean suddenly rushes to Andy, revealing that she missed him, and he tries to slice her, but a barrier protects her. Izumo wonders if she is the one who captured Andy 50 years ago, because she looks like a teenager. Andy reveals that she was 16 when she caught him, so he knows that she is now 66 years old, thinking the organization has an anti-aging technology, but she shuts him up, claiming she is stuck at 16 years old. He jumps back, realizing that something invisible was covering his mouth, so he needs to find a way to deal with her ability. She reveals that she is in love with Andy, saying she was ordered to capture him 50 years ago, but after she caught him, she realized that all of their seats were filled, so he had to stay in a cell. In a flashback, we see Andy in his cell, as Jean apologizes to him, telling him that she was only following orders. But he tells her that it's okay, because he can't die anyways, thinking the organization's experiments will help him understand his abilities better, and he wants to have a rematch, saying he won't lose again. Back in the present, Jean reveals that Andy's cool demeanor made her fall in love with him, but he escaped after he was held captive for 10 years, and he was nowhere to be found. However, after he met Izumo, Jean was finally able to find him. He throws bombs at her, causing a large explosion, but she emerges unscathed, revealing that she is angry at Shen, because he was the first member to reach Andy. She is happy that Void is dead, saying they now have a vacant spot in the Union, telling him he should take it. He throws a flashbang, and while she is blinded, he charges at her, trying to get past her barrier, but she counters, forcing him to retreat, as he reveals that he is still trying to figure out her ability. Izumo wonders where his friends are, but he tells her that they're already dead, so they will have to deal with Jean on their own. He recalls how she controlled the water in the lake and created an invisible barrier, thinking her ability has something to do with hardening, but he wonders why his sword can't slice through her barrier. She gathers wind energy, and she throws her weapon at Andy, slicing his body in half. She knows that he could have dodged it, but he wanted to protect Izumo, thinking she is a burden to him. Jean reveals that she has restrained the lower half of his body, telling him to give up on Izumo, but he refuses to let her die. So Jean prepares to take his head, but he reveals that he has already figured out her ability. He bites a grenade and slices off his head, launching it to the sky. He explodes in midair, causing his blood to rain on Jean and revealing the hands surrounding her, which were formed by fixing the air in place. He sees this as proof that his theory is correct, revealing that her ability is to prevent things from changing. Andy knows that he can't defeat her on his own, so he tells Izumo to help him out. She touches him with her chest, so Jean becomes upset, thinking she has seduced him with her body. Jean says that Izumo's beauty will fade after 20 years, but her ability prevents her appearance from changing, allowing her to keep her youthful appearance. However, Andy thinks that this is unusual, because she is an external targeter, explaining that there are two types of negators. The self-targeters can only use their abilities on themselves, while the external targeters can only use their abilities on others. Jean claims that she is a self-targeter, saying her appearance should serve as evidence, but Andy notices that she is aging, and she is just covering her face with makeup to give her a youthful appearance. He concludes that she is an external targeter, thinking her ability doesn't work on humans. This makes her upset, and she tries to attack him, but he starts flying away, as Izumo wonders why Jean is just walking to them, thinking running would be more efficient. Andy realizes that Jean has a weakness, saying they just need to find a good source of misfortune to take her out. At that moment, something hits them, causing them to crash, as Andy realizes that there is something above them. They are attacked by laser beams, as Jean reveals that they're investigating a mysterious animal in the lake, so she's been running a scan on it, using her ability to help find the creature. But she tells them that she's had enough, saying she will kill Izumo instead of the creature, as a UFO appears above them. She charges at him, trying to kill Izumo, but Andy dashes away, as he explains that he can't let Izumo die until she gives him the death that he desires. He notices blood in the water, so he realizes that there's a hole in the barrier under Jean's feet which allows her to walk. He dashes to her, as he plans to trigger bad luck at the right moment, knowing the hole should be big enough to squeeze his head in. He covers her with blood, obscuring her vision, so she thinks about releasing her barrier. But a sword slides into it, exposing its weak spot, as Izumo throws his head inside, triggering his bad luck and allowing him to reach Jean. He explains that since he is inside the barrier, the bad luck will be able to reach him, and the UFO fires a beam of light, destroying everything in its path. Izumo makes her way to Andy, and he is about to kill Jean, but he ultimately decides against it, realizing that she is about to die. Jean reveals that she did terrible things for the Union, hoping that things would change, but nothing happened in the end. She tells Izumo that her painting was beautiful, saying she never thought about making changes, but she now realizes that change isn't a bad thing. The anti-aging is about to wear off, so she tells them to leave, because she doesn't want them to see her face. But Andy hugs her, and he tells her that she is still beautiful, allowing her to enjoy her final moments. Izumo and Andy have a drink, and Izumo cries over her death. Andy thinks about how she always had doubts about killing to stay alive herself, and he thanks Izumo for helping him save her. But Izumo asks to try and change the Union, not wanting anyone else to suffer like she did. Andy agrees to help her, but a warp gate suddenly opens, and the two get picked up. They start to fall, and they realize they are at the Union. Andy immediately attacks with his fingers, calling it a greeting, but his attack is easily stopped. They land in their seats, and Andy tells them all to die, but Shen is happy to see them. Andy gets punched by a member named Tatiana, as she is mad that he killed Jean, but another member, Billy, reminds her that fighting among Union members is forbidden. It seems like she still wants to fight, but the first seat, Jules, tells them to stop, and Andy suddenly puts his sword to Izumo. Tatiana is also forced to attack Billy, and Jules asks them if they still want to continue, so they both agree to behave. They all continue with their meeting, and Jules calls upon a book named Apocalypse. The book opens, and reveals that they have 6 quests. The quests include capturing other negators, and taking out certain creatures known as UMAs, but they also come with rewards, like adding an extra seat to the Union. However, they only have until the end of the month to complete all the quests, or else they will face a punishment. Jules tells another member named Nico to run an analysis, and he determines that they are only able to complete 3 of the quests, so they will need to accept the punishment. Izumo is confused about what's going on, so the boy next to her, Tom, explains that Apocalypse is the first artifact that was found on Earth, and it forces them to complete a bunch of unreasonable quests. Izumo wonders why they need to listen to it, remembering how Jean was never able to change anything no matter how hard she tried. Jules explains that rules have been added to Earth 98 times, things like language, race, death, and sickness. If they don't intervene, new penalties will be added once every 3 months, so that's why they must do everything to strengthen their forces, wanting to eventually kill the creator of the Earth who is forcing these rules upon them. Izumo isn't happy about the situation, so Jules tells her she can make change if she becomes number 1, saying that the leader of the Union is determined by who has achieved the most results. Izumo wonders how long that would take, but Andy suddenly grabs Apocalypse, wanting to know which quest is the hardest. It bites off his hands, but tells him it's the one that involves an individual named Spoil. Andy immediately decides to accept it, saying he'll do it with Izumo, but also Shen. The request is accepted, and Shen can't believe he is getting dragged along. On the 21st of the month, we see Izumo getting dressed by Shen's subordinate Mui. She hopes that Izumo can help take care of Shen, revealing that she can't take part in the quest because she doesn't have an emblem. They prepare to head off, but Andy suddenly bumps into her, causing a magma explosion. His clothes are destroyed, but he wants to just get on with their quest. Shen tells him that he needs the outfit, explaining that it's special. The suit is surprisingly durable, and the tie grants access to all public services, as well as the ability to translate any language, and the emblem is necessary to participate in the quest. But Andy still doesn't care, saying they are splitting up, because he wants to have a date with Izumo. There is suddenly an alert, and we see that one of the UMAs in their containment has escaped. The group realizes that it's nearby, and Mui finds that the creature is named Clothes, which has the ability to latch onto a person and transform into the clothes that they most desire. But she notes that it takes control of the person's body. Andy gets punched, but he grabs the man and knocks him out. However, Mui notes that if the host loses the capacity to move, then Clothes will find a new body. Mui gets taken over, but Andy notes that her appearance didn't change, but we see she has gained an emblem. She starts attacking them, and Andy tells Shen to stop her with his power, but he says that it doesn't work on Clothes. Izumo grabs onto her, triggering her ability, and Mui is knocked out by a brick. The Clothes move again, targeting Izumo, but Andy saves her just in time, and it latches onto him instead. Izumo finds it strange that it doesn't seem to be turning into Clothes, and the creature curses at Andy because he's too demanding, wanting clothes that can instantly regenerate and fly to him at will. Andy calls it lame, so the creature tries to consume him, but he is suddenly hit by a laser since he touched Izumo, and Nico apologizes for an artifact malfunction. But we see Andy has tamed the creature, and Izumo names it Clothing. Andy gains points for the capture, and he moves up to the 9th rank. Meanwhile, Nico receives a report about the appearance of a UMA in New York. It's identified as a rotting corpse, so they think it must be Spoil, but Andy just gets excited about grabbing a burger in America. We see Andy and Izumo riding a truck in America, where Izumo reads a document, revealing that a rotting corpse was first spotted in New York City. We learn that their mission is to capture Spoil in the town of Longing, and Shen reveals that there is a legion of zombies. He says that a group of investigators went to the town, and they didn't make it back, but they were able to send a voice message. He plays it, and everyone hears the men as they panic, because they saw their bodies transforming. Zombies appeared, and they tried to defend themselves, but they were ultimately wiped out. Shen warns Andy that he's going to have a hard time against Spoil, saying he will have to go all out, but he isn't bothered at all. That evening, Shen approaches Izumo, telling her that he and Andy will deal with Spoil, but she reveals that she wants to help, mentioning the reward Apocalypse mentioned, which is the location of the negator called Unrepair. She explains that she wants to meet him, thinking he might be able to give Andy the death that he desires. She thinks that Andy forced Shen to join them, but he reveals that there's another reason, saying the quest is difficult, so he might be able to see another side of Andy. The next day, they arrive at their destination, and we see that it's surrounded by a wall. Andy pulls out a rocket launcher, using it to destroy the wall, and a horde of zombies appear. Andy wonders if they can be saved, but Shen tells him it's impossible, because their bodies have already been altered. He decides not to hold back, telling everyone to buckle up as he drives forward, using the truck to run over the zombies and ramming it into the wall. He jumps out, telling the zombies to duck if they can understand him, because he wants to talk to them. He proceeds to butcher the zombies, cutting off their heads, but he realizes that one of them was able to understand him, so he concludes that she isn't like the others. He plans to use her to look for Spoil, but Shen tells him that he's being reckless, revealing that UMAs are different from negators, because they are the rules themselves. Shen explains that negators need to meet certain conditions to activate their skills, but UMAs can impose their rule on anyone who steps within their range. Clothy tells Andy that there's something written on his stomach, and he realizes that there's a timer. Shen and Izumo don't see it on their bodies, so Shen thinks Andy must have entered Spoil's range, causing Izumo to become worried. But Andy maintains his composure, and he decides to wait until he spoils, thinking it won't be enough to kill him. As the timer expires, he begins to rot, but his body fights it, and he ends up turning into a half-zombie. The girl talks to him, and he can now understand what she's saying, so he tells his companions that he's going to marry her, saying she will reveal Spoil's location after their marriage. As he walks away, Izumo sees a boy, who hides after seeing her, but she chases after him. She enters an underground tunnel, thinking about saving the boy, but Shen forces her to retreat, telling her that she's being reckless. He tells her not to proceed further because she may enter Spoil's range, thinking the boy is going to become a zombie. A group of children appear, revealing that they have timers on them, but Shen wonders why their timers have more digits. Their leader thinks that Shen and Izumo are there to kill them because they're about to turn into zombies, but Izumo rushes to him, causing a timer to appear on her body, and Shen realizes that he can't abandon her, so he decides to join her. Meanwhile, we see the zombie girl dressed up for the wedding, and Andy tells her that she looks great. She thanks him for making her dream come true, saying she always wanted to wear a wedding dress. She implores him to put the zombies out of their misery, and she points him to a statue, telling him to kill it. He recalls that his order is to capture Spoil, but he wants to fulfill the girl's wish, so he attacks the statue, causing it to transform as Spoil awakens, destroying the chapel. Andy emerges from the rubble, and we see that the zombies tried to protect him. He launches his fists, hitting the bell, and he tells the zombies to attack Spoil, advising them to follow the sound of the bell, so a swarm of zombies rush to the location. We return to Izumo, as the leader introduces himself as Ken, revealing that he is the oldest in the group, so he's responsible for keeping everyone safe. Izumo tells him that they are there to help, and she inquires about what happened. In a flashback, a dark ball appears in the middle of the town, and it starts talking to the people, telling them that they are easy to spoil. It unleashes its powers, causing everyone to turn into zombies, but Ken's teacher helps the children escape, taking them to the underground tunnel. She tells them not to worry about her, claiming she isn't going to die until she gets married, and she advises them to focus on their dreams, because it's going to prevent them from spoiling. Back in the present, the girl cries, and Ken approaches her, seeing that her timer is about to expire. He reminds her about her dream to become a florist, causing her to feel better, and the number on her timer suddenly goes up. He tells Izumo that this is how they raise the numbers, asking her if she's going to help them. At that moment, they hear a commotion, as Shen realizes that there is something happening above them. They decide to check it out, and they see Andy fighting Spoil, as the zombies try to help him. Izumo is surprised to see this, but Shen knows that the zombies are no match for Spoil, saying Andy is just being kind to them by giving them a chance to fight to the death. He sees Shen, telling him to hold onto his bride, and the kids recognize her as their teacher. They are happy to see her, and a zombie touches Izumo as he charges at Spoil. A signage falls, slicing him in half, and Andy sees this, realizing that the zombies don't stand a chance, so he comes up with a plan. He orders the zombies to touch Izumo, saying she will turn them into bombs, as he explains that it's the only way to win. Izumo is against the idea, but the teacher hugs her, and she realizes that the zombies can't be saved, so they are ready to die in the fight. She decides to go with the plan, and the teacher charges at Spoil, as Ken tries to save her, but Shen uses his ability, forcing the boy to stop. She approaches Spoil, and she ends up getting crushed, but it suddenly loses its footing, and it crashes into a building filled with gunpowder, resulting in an explosion. But Shen knows that it isn't strong enough, and Spoil gets back up, as Andy tells the zombies to keep up the pressure, so they charge in, as Izumo touches all of them, turning them into bombs. They cling to Spoil as they detonate, covering the area with explosions. But it inhales the zombies, swallowing all of them, and a mysterious energy surrounds it, as it transforms into its second form. It's about to attack Andy with an energy beam, but Shen uses his ability, causing it to miss, and it ends up hitting the Statue of Liberty, destroying it in one hit. It starts flying, as it launches more energy beams, hitting Andy's arm, so he cuts it off, realizing that it disintegrates anything it hits. He knows that the attack is dangerous, so he thinks about ending the fight, and he charges in, but his body begins to rot. Spoil attacks him, causing him to crash, and it proceeds to pummel him while he's down. It starts talking to Shen and Izumo, and Shen tries to use his ability, but it doesn't work, so he decides to run away. Spoil tells Izumo that the world is uglier without decay, saying it's a necessary rule, but the humans are rejecting it. It says that human bodies won't even last for a year, so it wonders why they are so attached to it. Izumo explains that it's because they need their bodies to pursue their dreams, revealing that she wants to become a normal girl and live life to the fullest. She says that she won't give up no matter what happens, causing the timer on her body to reset. Spoil is surprised to see this, and Shen charges in, managing to land a hit, as he reveals that his dream is to become the greatest in all of creation. Andy warns him not to get too close, or his body will rot, but he reveals that he has already figured out its ability. He explains that when it talked to Izumo, nothing happened to her, so he concludes that it has a spoil field around its body, and it's vulnerable when it sticks its head out. But he reveals that he has a unique staff, and he orders it to extend, allowing him to attack Spoil. We learn that he can control the length of his staff, and he uses it to strike Spoil as it wonders why its body is approaching him on its own. We learn that Shen's ability is activated when the target is in his field of vision, and it forces the target to perform the opposite of the intended action. So when Spoil is trying to protect itself, it becomes more vulnerable to his attacks, but to activate this ability, he must become fond of his target. Andy wonders how they're supposed to capture Spoil, so Shen explains that it has a core, but he can't remove it, because his body will rot if he gets too close. Spoil struggles against Shen, and it tries to fire an energy beam, but it ultimately fails. Shen recognizes Spoil's powers, revealing that he is happy because he will finally be able to find the man he's looking for. Izumo wonders how they can stop its ability, and Andy explains that decomposition can't occur without moisture, so he thinks about removing the moisture in the air. He thinks that explosions will do the trick, so he touches Izumo, and he approaches Spoil, but instead of exploding, the ground splits open, causing him to fall. Shen looks away, and Spoil sees an opening, so it tries to attack him, but he manages to defend himself, as he realizes that it's trying to obstruct his vision with the dust clouds, so that he can't use his ability. Izumo thinks about taking Spoil to space, because there's no moisture there, and Shen reveals that he can lift it there, telling Andy that he can defeat it while they're in space, but he will have to endure its ability during the ascent. Shen advises Andy to unlock his memories, knowing his old self will be able to accomplish the task, and he decides to go with Shen's plan, but he says that there will be some stipulations. Shen accepts it, and he throws his staff into the crack, where Andy takes it, and he orders the staff to extend, launching Spoil to the air. He unlocks his memories, and they exit Earth's atmosphere, as Izumo becomes worried, because she recalls that Andy is going to become unstable if he unlocks his memories. Shen knows about this, telling her that she's about to meet the man who brought victory to countless battlefields. Spoil reveals that it can still fire energy beams without moisture, and it hits Andy's head, but he immediately regenerates as his appearance changes. He tells Spoil that it's no match for him, as he fires 2 of his fingers, and each of them regenerates, creating copies that butcher its body. He manages to take its core, and he allows it to fall with his hand, saying it's time to have fun. We cut to Shen, as he tells the children to leave the area, explaining that they're about to get rescued. Spoil's core crashes to the ground, and Andy's body regenerates from his hand, but Shen advises Izumo to stand back, and he orders Mui to take the core. We see that Andy is struggling with his consciousness, telling his other self that he is wasting his life, and that it's impossible for him to die. He approaches Izumo, blaming her for the mess, but Shen gets in the way, calling him Victor, the god of victory. But he explains that he's only human, and he attacks Shen, overpowering him, as he wonders why his ability isn't working on Victor. He notes that Victor has superhuman strength, because he is striking with all of his might, allowing his bones to break with each attack. He shoots his fingers, blowing Shen away, and Izumo tries to use her ability, but she realizes that it isn't working. Shen orders Mui to send a message, as Victor calls Izumo pathetic, telling her to give up on trying to kill him. He threatens to kill her, but she calls out to Andy, imploring him to return. Victor calls her an idiot, but Shen interrupts him, admitting that he is lost, because he isn't strong enough to defeat Victor. But he recalls the first promise he made to Andy, which is to protect Izumo, so he pushes Victor back. But he thinks about the second promise, which is to defeat Victor, knowing he can't do it on his own. A portal opens, as the other members of the Union arrive, so Victor tries to shoot them, but they are able to block it, and Nico attacks him, slicing him in half. He notices that he isn't regenerating, as Nico reveals that his injuries have been burned, so he won't be able to heal as fast. But Victor reveals that he can choose where he regenerates, and he shoots his finger, allowing him to restore his body. He warns the Union members not to interfere, but they stand their ground, so he prepares to take them on, and Jules confronts him, ready to fight to the death. Jules manages to cut him, but he just flies up, shooting out his fingers to create clones of himself. He tries to attack Shen, but they are saved by Top. They manage to get away, but Izumo finds it strange that Top is still running. She wonders how they can stop Andy, but Top has no idea. She asks to be taken back to Andy, but Top warns her that he's not the same person she knew. She still insists, so Shen gives her a gun for her protection, as well as Andy's seal. She runs off, and Top tells Shen to stop her, but he just calls her interesting, and Top ends up agreeing to take her back. Meanwhile, we see the other Union members fighting Victor, but he just keeps regenerating no matter what. Top wonders what they can do, but Izumo is able to determine that Andy is within the copy that's fighting Jules, since clothing is attached to him. Top isn't convinced, but Izumo tells him to throw her at him. As Jules fights with him, Izumo lunges at him, while lifting up her shirt, hugging him with her chest. Everyone is shocked, but all the clones seem to be destroyed. She waits for her bad luck to take effect, so she can put his seal back in, and Jules wonders how long it will take, but Izumo doesn't know since she has never held onto someone she hates. Jules thinks her bad luck would work if it was Andy, so she says they need to bring Andy back even if it's just for a second. Victor refuses to let that happen, shooting out his fingers to create his clones, but the other Union members protect her. Izumo worries for them, but they tell her to focus on waking Andy up. She calls out to him, begging Andy to come back, so Victor tries to attack her, but gets stopped by Top. Izumo thinks about how to wake him up, thinking back to everything they've been through, and how he saved her the first time they met. She uses her gun, shooting the scar on his head, realizing that none of his clones have the scar, determining that's where Andy is being kept. She calls out to him, begging him to reach out to her, and Andy is able to return for the moment. He takes the chance to kiss her, destroying all the copies, and he tells her they'll continue next time. Izumo gets embarrassed hearing this, running away as she warns the others that the bad luck is coming. They all start to retreat, but Victor regains control of his body, preparing to stop them, but Shen emerges, using his ability to stop him. Victor accepts his defeat, and meteors rain down on him, causing a massive explosion, which creates a tidal wave, but the others are protected by Nico's barrier. The town is completely destroyed, but Izumo rushes down to find Andy. She makes it to him, stabbing him with his seal, but the water comes flooding back in. When Izumo wakes up, she calls out for Andy, but he is right by her side. She vents her frustration at him for his reckless plan, thinking she would be alone again if it had failed. He apologizes to her, but she worries about him touching her head. He tells her her voice was the only thing he was able to hear when he was swallowed up, thanking her for saving him. She gets happy hearing him say this, and he tries to act cool, but he gets hit by his bad luck. The Union have their meeting, and Izumo apologizes for being late, while Shen is happy they are okay. She thinks Andy is in the wrong seat, but he reminds her how he moved up to rank 9 after the clothing incident. The meeting continues, and Apocalypse prepares to announce the results of their quests. Apocalypse announces that the first quest has been completed because the Union was able to capture the UMA, Burn, and an 11th seat has been added as a reward. The second quest is also successful because they were able to capture another UMA called Eat, and as a reward, Apocalypse reveals the location of the Negator, Unburn, telling everyone that they can capture him if they need him. We learn that Nico was able to complete the third quest, so Apocalypse unifies the world's languages, allowing everyone to communicate in English, as it reveals that the memories of the normal people have been altered. Shen decides to test this, calling Mui and asking her a question in Chinese, but she has no idea what he's saying, so he concludes that the unification has already taken effect. Apocalypse announces that the fourth quest is a success, and as a reward, the location of the artifact, Rebellion, has been revealed. The fifth quest was completed by Andy and Izumo when they captured Spoil, so Apocalypse rewards them by revealing the location of the Negator Rip, who has the power of Unrepair. Izumo gets excited about this, thinking Andy might be able to get the real death that he wants, but we see Andy isn't as excited as her. Apocalypse tells them they failed the sixth quest, which was to capture the Negator Unseen, and Andy thinks that he was taken by Rip because they sent men to look for him, but they all ended up bleeding to death. We see that Andy is right, because Unseen has been captured by Rip, who put a homing device in his stomach to ensure that he can't escape. Rip invites him to join his group, promising to deactivate his ability if Unseen agrees to his proposal. Apocalypse Apocalypse explains that there's going to be a penalty because they failed to complete a quest, and it summons the UMA called Galaxy. It takes the form of an enormous creature, which leaves the Union as it takes to the sky. Jules summons the tamed UMA Move, ordering it to transport them to the surface, so it opens a warp gate, which causes them to fall, and they immediately reach Australia, as Move tells them that it has done its part. Izumo thinks that the penalty isn't too bad, but Jules tells her that the UMAs added by Apocalypse are always dangerous, saying it could lead to the extinction of humanity. Galaxy leaves the atmosphere, and it causes a massive explosion, which alters the celestial bodies in the cosmos. The universe changes, and Nico contacts his subordinates, telling them that a new rule has just been added, so he tells them to fill him in. They attach themselves to a device, which instantly transmits their knowledge to Nico, allowing him to learn all the changes that happened after the new rule was added. He explains that new planets have appeared, and the world has completely changed, saying the aliens are about to invade Earth. An alien fleet appears, as Nico explains that they are from an advanced civilization, and they are invading other planets because their home world is on a path to ruin. Their leader appears, explaining that they're going to invade Earth, but Jules approaches him, telling him to withdraw his ships. But he fires an energy beam, causing an enormous explosion, and he tells her that humans don't stand a chance because their civilization is underdeveloped. He threatens to wipe out all of humanity, saying he's fighting for what's right because his people need the planet to survive. But Jules removes her helmet, and we learn that she has the ability to negate a person's sense of justice, allowing her to control the actions of others. The ships start firing at each other, and the alien fleet is completely destroyed as the leader falls into despair. Jules explains that the penalty is always severe, and the world would have been destroyed if it wasn't for her ability. She reveals that this is the 99th penalty added by Apocalypse, and they can't afford to fail another quest, because they discovered a stone tablet which has 101 slots, and one of them is filled every time they receive a penalty. She explains that there are 2 slots left, and the final slot is labeled as Ragnarok, which could mean the end of the world. She reveals that Apocalypse won't give the next quests until they add the 11th member, and they will receive a penalty after 3 months, so she thinks that finding a new member is their top priority. She realizes that the leader is still alive, because he never believed that he was fighting for what's right, so she tells him to warn the aliens to stay away from Earth, and he immediately retreats. Jules suggests recruiting Rip, and Andy volunteers to look for him. She thinks that he will need backup, so she tells him to take Tatiana and Izumo with him. Andy and Izumo fly to Brazil, and we learn that they are going to infiltrate a black market auction conducted by the Mafia, where a negator is going to be sold. Andy explains that it will take place in a luxury liner, and they need to enter the ship to find Rip, revealing that they have guest passes created by Nico. He knows that they won't blend in with their current attire, because the auction is going to be attended by celebrities, so he suggests dressing up for the mission. They enter a mall, where Andy wears a suit, and Izumo thinks he looks great, so he decides to buy it. She tries looking for a dress, but she isn't used to wearing a revealing outfit, so he helps her pick one, telling her that he won't let anyone touch her. She recalls her conversation with Jules, where she wondered why she was chosen for the mission, thinking she's going to be a burden. Jules explains that she wants to protect the world, and she thought that Izumo was a threat to innocent people, which was why she ordered Shen and Void to kill her. But she recalls their fight with Victor, saying Izumo's ability has potential, and she thinks that Izumo might be the key to defeating God, reminding her that Ragnarok is approaching. Jules orders her to connect with Andy, thinking she will unlock her full potential if she falls in love with him. Izumo wears a dress, and Andy tells her that she looks great, giving her advice on how to project herself, and he thinks that she looks perfect, so they decide to buy it. They walk around the streets, as Andy reminds Izumo that she kissed Victor, saying she should kiss him now that he has control over his body, but she starts running away, because she doesn't want to do it. He chases after her, telling her that he deserves the kiss, but she threatens to trigger his bad luck. But he isn't worried, knowing he's covered with clothes, but she calls out to Clothy, and it exposes his skin, allowing her to touch him. A truck hits him, blowing him away, and he falls into the ocean, where he gets eaten by a shark. Andy is washed ashore, and he tells Izumo that Victor is the original owner of the body, saying he's only in control if his memories are sealed. He's worried that Victor might return, but she assures him that she will always be there to save him. He holds onto her, but she realizes that her gloves are off, and Tatiana crashes into him, reminding them about their mission. She tells them that they will look for Rip in the luxury liner, while she searches for him outside, advising them to pretend that they're a couple, because their guest passes mention that they're married. They are able to enter the ship, and they hear people talking about the Negator, who is revealed to be the main item for the auction. The people mention that Negators are becoming easier to find, and Izumo wonders how this happened, so Andy explains that this is because of the language unification, reminding her that it only took effect for non-Negators. He tells her that Shen can only talk to them because of his necktie, saying everyone is using the English language, so the Negators who can't speak English are standing out. Izumo realizes that Negators are being treated harshly, and Andy tells her that they won't be able to live good lives, but he thinks they can change this, saying they can kill God to remove the source of their abilities. We see Rip with his associate Mira, as the guards stop them, telling them that the area is off limits. But he refuses to leave, so they threaten to kill him, and he asks Mira if he's going to die. She tells him that they're going to shoot his head, but he instantly dashes past them, slicing their necks and causing them to bleed out. A massive creature emerges, and it launches his companions, Creed and Fang, allowing them to join him. He tells them about the Negator at the auction, and Creed mocks Mira because she's supposed to be a fortune teller, but her predictions are inaccurate. Tatiana sees them, so she warns Andy and Izumo, telling them that Rip's group is after the Negator at the auction. Jules reveals that they are known as the Negator Hunters, and they specialize in collecting Negators by force. They are similar to the Union, but their goals are different, because the Union wants to kill God to get rid of the rules, while the Negator Hunters want to seek revenge against the world. Andy and Izumo make their way to the cargo, trying to reach the Negator before the Hunters find him. But the guards start firing at them, so Tatiana gives Andy his sword, and he uses it to slice his head off. Izumo throws him to the guards, and his bad luck is triggered, causing an explosion which allows them to escape. They rush to the Negator, but they see explosives along the way, and it detonates, causing an explosion which alerts the guard at the cargo. The Negator Chikara uses this chance to escape, but the guard sees him, so he uses his ability, causing the guard to stop moving. But we learn that he can only use his ability while he's immobile, so he realizes that he can't escape because the guard is about to shoot him, and he wonders how the Mafia found out about his ability because he didn't tell anyone about it. In a flashback, we see Chikara going to school, and his friend tries to talk to him, but he wonders why everyone is speaking in English, thinking they're playing a prank on him. But they can't understand what he's saying, and at that moment, he gets abducted by the Mafia, knowing he's a Negator, because he wasn't speaking in English. Back in the present, Chikara sees monsters in the cargo, so he starts to freak out, realizing he's in trouble because he needs to be completely immobile for his ability to take effect. The guard starts moving, preparing to shoot his leg, but at that moment, Rip arrives, taking out the guard. He was able to observe Chikara, thinking his ability could be useful, but he can't understand what Rip is saying, so they can't communicate with each other. Creed decides to test him, pulling out a minigun and telling him that he's about to get shot, so he needs to use his ability to survive. Rip thinks that it doesn't matter if he dies, because he won't be useful if he can't defend himself, revealing that his ability will transfer to a new user after his death. Creed prepares to shoot him, but he can't stop shaking, thinking he's going to die because he can't control his ability. Creed fires relentlessly, and everyone thinks he's dead, but as the dust clears, they realize that Andy protected him. Andy observes them, trying to guess their abilities, but Rip suddenly attacks him, slicing his neck, and telling him that his wound won't heal unless he defeats him. Andy tries to cut his head off, but he realizes that he can't, as Rip explains that his unrepaired negates all kinds of healing techniques, so Andy can't cut off his body parts to repair his body. Rip knows that he's working for the Union, telling him to hand over Chikara because they want to kill him, saying his ability is useful, but he can't use it properly, so they need to transfer it to someone else. But Andy charges forward, as Izumo slices his head off, using it as a projectile. Tatiana arrives, attacking Creed and Fang, as she tells Andy that she will deal with them. He charges in, trying to slash Rip, but he manages to dodge it, and he counters, slicing off Andy's arms. He approaches the sword, but Rip tells him that it won't work, because he can't cut his body parts to heal himself. but he slices off his forearms and launches them at Rip, who wonders how this is possible. But Mira protects him, causing the attack to miss, and he realizes that his rule didn't apply to Andy because he didn't cut his forearms to heal, but to launch an attack. Rip admits that he likes him, inviting him to join the Negator Hunters, but he refuses, saying he isn't interested. Rip thinks that Chikara is useless because he can't control his ability, so they don't need him in the group, saying they only need strong Negators to dominate the world. Izumo tells Rip not to make the people suffer, saying they should blame God instead, but he tells her that they already have enough problems, and fighting God is too risky. Andy tries to kill Mira, and she gets covered in blood, but he completely misses, wondering if she negated his attack. Rip throws his knife, trying to kill Chikara, and Andy tries to block it, but it pierces through his body. Izumo gets in the way, and she manages to stop it, but she suffers a fatal injury, and Rip thinks that she only has an hour left to live, because she's going to bleed out. Andy thinks about removing his seal, but she assures him that she's going to be fine, telling him to be his usual self, so he ultimately decides against it. The guards arrive, so Rip decides to retreat, and they surround Andy, thinking he's with the Negator Hunters. Chikara tries to stop the bleeding, but Andy warns him not to touch Izumo, saying he could end up dying. He tells the guards to call a doctor, imploring them to spare her, but they refuse to listen to him. In a flashback, we see Chikara's mother on her deathbed, telling him to cherish the people who show him kindness, because she considers them irreplaceable. She advises him to take a moment to pause when they're in trouble, and get back into action to save them. Back in the present, the guards decide to shoot him, but he musters the courage to stop the bullets, and even the guards are unable to move. Andy is surprised that he was able to control his ability, but he explains that Izumo got hurt because of him, thinking he's a coward, so he's determined to save her. We cut to Tatiana as she fights Creed and Fang. Creed realizes that his bullets aren't effective, so he throws grenades as Fang attacks her and pushes her away. She notes that her armor has been cracked, and Andy contacts her, telling her that Izumo has been injured. He informs her that Izumo will bleed to death, saying the only way to save her is to defeat Rip, and Tatiana becomes angry. In a flashback, we learn that Tatiana was devastated when she learned about Jean's death, so she immediately attacked Andy when he joined the Union and challenged him to a fight. Andy accepts her challenge, and she tells him that she doesn't recognize him as part of the group, saying she wants to avenge Jean. She tries to attack him, but he dodges her attacks, and she tells him that Jean loved him, but he doesn't care, saying he already knew about her feelings, but he killed her anyway. Tatiana becomes enraged, launching all of her arms, but Andy still manages to dodge them. He notices that Izumo is in trouble, so he rushes to her, saving her just in time. Tatiana can't believe that she almost got Izumo killed, and she realizes that Izumo would be dead if it wasn't for Andy. Nico tells her to calm down, saying the next quest will decide if Andy and Izumo deserve to be in the Union. But Andy clings to her, and she sees his junk, causing her to become triggered. Everyone is advised to evacuate, and Nico warns Andy that Izumo is in danger because Tatiana's armor was created to contain her ability, which is so powerful that it can destroy an entire city. Nico orders everyone to leave, but Izumo clings to Tatiana, saying it was her ability that killed Jean, and Andy was just fighting to protect her. She apologizes to Tatiana, saying she wants to be her friend, and this causes Tatiana to calm down. After some time, Izumo visits Tatiana in her room, offering to shake hands with her, but she refuses, saying she can't do it because of her ability. Izumo tells her that she can use her robotic hands, saying she can use her real hand after they defeat God, and they end up becoming friends. Back in the present, Chikara reveals that he can no longer maintain his ability, so Andy helps him escape. Andy tells Tatiana that he needs to defeat Rip, so he can't back her up, but she tells him to retreat, as she prepares to unleash her true power. She thinks about Izumo, realizing that she's a great person, so she became one of her closest friends. Tatiana can't forgive the Negator Hunters for hurting Izumo, and she releases her armor. Creed thinks she's vulnerable, so he tries to shoot her, but it doesn't work, and he realizes that there's another barrier protecting her. So he tries to fill the room with poison gas, thinking it should be enough to kill her. In another flashback, we see Tatiana's family celebrating her 5th birthday, but her ability suddenly awakens, destroying everything around her. The police rush to the scene, and she decides to run away, but she ends up getting kidnapped by the mafia. She's about to be sold in an auction, but Billy arrives and shoots everyone down. He approaches her, but she tells him to shoot her, saying her life is miserable because of her ability. He tells her to open her mouth, but instead of shooting her, he gives her food, telling her that he made it himself. He explains that her ability produces an untouchable barrier around her body, but opening her mouth creates a hole in her barrier. He knows that she's been drinking liquid through a tube, so he made long bars of cake for her to enjoy, and she ends up joining the union. Nico creates an armor for her, allowing her to contain her barrier, which continues to expand with each passing year. He tells her that she's been suppressing her powers, so unleashing it will have a devastating effect. And Billy tells her that she can use her ability to save people, advising her not to hold back when she needs to protect someone important. Back in the present, Tatiana is determined to protect Izumo, so she decides to go all out, expanding her barrier, which destroys everything that it touches. It continues to expand until the ship is completely destroyed. Andy sees Rip, and he prepares to shoot him, determined to save Izumo before she bleeds to death.